Okay, welcome to the special meeting of the Lawndale City Council special meeting, as well as the Lawndale Cable Usage Corporation special meeting, the Lawndale Housing Authority special meeting, and the Redevelopment Successor Agency special meeting. I'm going to ask the Assistant City Clerk to give us the roll call of all the agencies.
Mayor Pro Tem Suarez.
Here.
Councilmember Osborne.
Here.
Councilmember Reed.
Here.
Councilmember Kearney.
Here.
Mayor Pula Miles.
Here.
All members in attendance.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next item on our agenda, I'm going to ask Councilmember Daniel Reed to lead us in the pledge salute. Flag salute.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman. We're now on item C, oral communications. Assistant City Clerk, are there any oral communications concerning this agenda of any of the agencies?
Mr. Mayor, no public comment received.
Thank you, sir. So we will close public comment as well as comments from the council/agency members. We're now on the consent calendar. What is the pleasure of this body concerning the consent calendar, which includes the Redevelopment Agency, Housing Authority, as well as the Successor Agency, and the Lawndale Cable Usage?
Mayor, this is Councilman Kearney. I
Yes,
move
sir.
to accept all three of them as written.
Okay. So the motion has been made that we approve the consent calendar of all the agencies, and seconded by
Councilman
This
Reed.
is Mayor Pro Tem. Oh.
Councilman Reed. Okay, thank you, Mr. Reed. Okay, is there any questions or debate on the motion? Seeing none, would the clerk please just the roll call?
For the consent calendar, Mayor Pro Tem Suarez.
Yes.
Councilmember Osborne.
Yes.
Councilmember Reed.
Yes.
Councilmember Kearney.
Yes.
Mayor Pula Miles.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, sir. Item F, Administration, City Council, Redevelopment Successor Agency, Lawndale Housing Authority, and the Lawndale Cable Usage Corporation Annual Budget Fiscal Year 2020 through 21. Let's have a staff report. Oh, I should add, let me back up real quick. Let me ask, are there any additions to the agenda that anyone wants to add before we go into item 4? Not that we necessarily would take it up at this moment, but is there any items anyone wants to add?
On item
Mayor
4?
Paul Miles.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
I wanted to see if we could add an emergency item to the agenda to confer with legal counsel regarding potential litigation.
Okay. For legal counsel. Okay.
I know our
Okay.
city attorney's not here right now, so I'm not quite sure how.
Well, let's do this.
That
Let's when our city attorney logs in, we'll break and we'll take a motion to see if we have 4/5 of the councils have desire to add an item to the agenda on the consent, not consent calendar, the
Closed session. Yeah.
So let's do that after she has a chance to log in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's go back to item number 4, the annual budget. Let's have a staff report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. This is Kevin Chen, City Manager. This is your meeting to consider the annual budget for fiscal year 2020-21. And this is a meeting that follows up the study session that you had on Monday regarding the budget, where staff went over a series of recommendations for you for approval of the budget. So with that, I will turn it over once again to our Finance Director, Marla Pendleton. Marla?
Thank you, Kevin. On Monday, June 1st, we had a meeting to discuss the budget, and we actually had a workshop, and we went into all of the details of the proposed budget for next fiscal year 2021. In that, we presented the budget conditions for next year to include a shortfall. The shortfall was made up of decreased revenue projections of $615,000, decreases in our increases in our labor costs, $395,000, increase in our operating costs of $366,000, increase in capital costs, $36,000, and a decrease in transfer outs, $81,000, and then an increase related to one-time cost of $95,000, which brought us up to a budget deficit of about $1.25 million. In order to address this shortfall in funding for the general fund, we've talked to departments, we made cuts in the budget, and we also developed a budget subcommittee to talk about all of the options available to balance our budget. We came up with 14 recommendations that are summarized for today's calendar. These 14 items are cuts that do balance our budget, and today we are recommending that council consider them and adopt them as is for a balanced proposed budget for next fiscal year. Okay. What, do you want me to continue?
Yes, please do.
Yes, please.
Okay, so in our recommendations, the 14 items, the first one is basically a layoff of all of our temporary staff citywide. There are some positions, however, that are funded with restricted money, some of it new time money, and some that we feel are completely critical for operations. So these, we've basically put them in a spreadsheet and asked for those to be put in the budget, but the majority positions we are recommending layoffs. For those that we are recommending to fund, those we brought back when they are actually needed. Some of the positions cannot be utilized to date because they're for things like parks, maybe the gym, things that are closed, so or they're seasonal. But when needed, we wanted to bring those positions back if needed this fiscal year, but go ahead and adopt the budget so it establishes that funding source. When needed, we can utilize those positions. The second one has to do with just reducing our recreation program uniform budget in half. Third recommendation is laying off full-time staff in our community service department that was hit the most severe in this pandemic, and services are actually being sacrificed because of the current conditions, and we are recommending that some positions are eliminated at this time so that we can reorganize that function. We're recommending a policy item to eliminate all travel training budgets in the current year. If things change and funding comes back, then of course some of those would be funded. We're recommending eliminating the school crossing guard services. We are recommending discontinuing unarmed security services, reducing funding at Public Works for the sum of $37,500, reducing tree trimming services by $80,000, reducing our senior travel club support $21,000 to $10,000, deferring a one-time budget request for ADA standard contract at $43,400. Transferring costs from the community service budget into a new grant. That's the CDBG CV grant. It's a one-time related to COVID-19. and that's for our senior meal program predominantly. We're recommending giving a one-year notice to the Lawndale Elementary School District regarding the 3 school parks. Reason making that recommendation, current year it will not impact it. We did want to put that in the year proposal. However, the school district, the contracts that we entered for all 3 parks requires a 1-year notice. So if we want to do that in the future, we would have to give notice to the school, and then a year later, we would then stop supporting those costs. Number 13 is reduce services to Lawndale Beat from 2 routes to 1. That, of course, is restricted money, Measure A. So if that's the case, we do, Prop A. If we do eliminate one of the services, reduce services, we would have that funding available for other uses. So we would want direction on how to utilize that money. Based on all the recommendations, we have $43,340 over that we're recommending it be put to unemployment insurance. The pending layoffs, we're assuming that those costs would be increased. Total of all recommendations that were vetted again with the departments and with the subcommittee, $1.252 million, and that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you for that report.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Yes, this is Kevin Chun. If you don't mind, I'd like to follow up Marla's report with a few comments.
Okay.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. First off, I want to thank Marla and her Finance Department team for all the work that they've done in preparing the budget. They've spent just many hours on their days off over the weekend, over the many weeks and months prior to this, getting our revenue projections in place and our expenditure projections in place. And it was just a monumental effort because of it's a department that has been short-staffed for some time. It's just now up to staff and gearing up and having to do the budget on top of their regular duties has just been a great effort. So I want to thank Marla for that. In addition, I want to thank our department heads for all the work that they've done as well in preparing this budget, working with Marla and I. Frankly, it was a very daunting task. In light of the situation that we're in with COVID-19, having to close a $1.25 million deficit was just an extremely tall order, and it required making some very, very difficult decisions, both from a budgetary standpoint as well as from an operational standpoint. It required that that staff work with a City Council budget subcommittee to help develop recommendations. And I wanted to thank again Council members Kearney and Reed for serving on that subcommittee and working with staff. We had to meet over 4 different meetings over the last few weeks. Some of those meetings were called on very, very short notice. So again, I want to thank them for their availability and for their help in coming up with the recommendations that are before you tonight. And through it all the work that we put into it, we've accomplished our goal. We've accomplished our goal in filling the $1.25 million deficit. And again, it was just a very difficult task considering, the time that we're in. But I wanted to say that 6 months ago, you gave me the great honor and responsibility of being your city manager and helping to make the best operational decisions possible, as well as the best personnel decisions possible. And I think that's what this budget reflects. It reflects a lot of work put into looking at our financial situation, and then from that developing a sound budget. In addition, it reflects looking at our city operations and making budgetary cuts in a way that considers maintaining our operations and allowing our operations to continue so that we can provide the necessary services for our community. And it also reflects a lot of personnel considerations, what personnel we need to get the job done. And of course, in coming up with the budget and looking at personnel, we had to consider various things, including labor rules, as well as the current MOU that we have with our employee union. So there was a lot of consideration that went into the budget and the recommendations for cutting the deficit. So having said that, I strongly recommend that the council consider these 14 recommendations and approve them. And again, because it's based on a lot of analysis that staff put into and thought that staff put into the budget, it reflects the recommendations and the consideration of our departments and our department directors as the ones that run the city's departments on a day-to-day basis. So their input was crucial. Their expertise and their input was crucial for developing this budget. And again, it's a balanced budget. It's a budget that considers all of our operational, financial, and personnel issues. Of course, we welcome the council's suggestions, but I would caution you in approving any recommendations or suggestions at this stage, especially suggestions involving personnel, without allowing us to fully vet those suggestions so that we can understand what the full impacts are to our city operations. I mean, it's like they say, the devil's in the detail. And while, again, we welcome the suggestions, we would like to fully understand what that means for our city organization. So with that, I look forward to, the discussion tonight on the budget. Thank you, Mayor.
Robert?
Okay, sorry about that. I was on mute. Thank you, Mr. City Manager and the Public Finance Director, for those presentations. What I'm going to suggest we do is go from one item real quickly from 1 to 14, and if there is no discussion to be had on a particular item, we'll just skip it because we're pretty much versed as to what the recommendations are at this time. So I'll just read, like, for instance, recommendations 1. I don't hear anyone willing to seeking the floor, I should say. Then we will go to the next one quickly. Then we'll get to the next one quickly. Okay, with that being the case, let's take recommendations number 1. Are there anyone want the floor on 1?
Mayor, this is Councilman Kearney.
Yes, sir.
I have some questions about a couple of individuals we're laying off in MSD, weekends, code enforcement, and animal control. I did some research today, and I talked to Marla, so Marla can tune in anytime you want to, Marla. What they, Stephanie and Daniel Wright, tickets or citations and stuff and penalties, not year to date, from July 1st last year to 5/24 this year, as of the date, they've written almost 40. Well, Stephanie's wrote $785 in cost, 774 tickets for a cost of $45,785, with the penalties compounded on top of that. To date, she has secured $65,712. And then Daniel, which is the other, I think he's animal control, but he can also write tickets. As of to date, as of the 24th, he's written 608 tickets for a cost of $22,757, plus penalties of $18,269 for $41,026. You take away what they've made as of salary-wise, as of May 24th, which is $25,311, that's a gross profit to the general fund of $17,401 to Stephanie. And Daniel is taking away with his minus what he's made as of the 24th. That's a money to our general fund of $5,163. Based on, they still have 5 weeks left till the end of the fiscal year. Their total cost, Marla, step in anytime you want to. Stephanie with plus the medical will be $28,371, and Daniel will be $23,898.
If I could just interrupt for a second, Pat, I apologize. This is Tiffany. Could you refer to people by their position and not by their names?
Okay, well, I only have names, but anyway, okay.
Thank you.
The first one is a parking enforcement, code enforcement officer, and the second one is a animal control officer. So the first one wrote 674 citations as of the 24th of May. Second one has written 608 citations as of the 24th of May. So these two individuals actually pay for themselves already, plus they're putting into the general fund, I'm going to say $22,000. So, and I know Mike Reyes said at the council meeting that there was going to be a lull time, maybe an hour or 2 hours, that there's no coverage. And so I have concerns about the coverage on the weekend, because that's when most of our parking on the lawns, illegal construction going on, parking in handicap ramps. And I'd like to see these two individuals stay on, if feasible. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Robert.
Okay, thanks for that, Councilman. I do too have an item on one. Anyone else have anything on item one they want to add? Okay, I want to say also on item one, also I'm looking at what the council member kind of laid out, and I'm just concerned that one, I'm concerned about if there's a gap in coverage during the weekends, you shifting personnel to the weekends, then there's going to be at some point a gap in coverage during the weekday. So I'm concerned about that. And also, my understanding is that when we write citations or take any type of primitive action, is really to get people to comply, into compliance, and we are allowed to have cost recovery. So if we're allowed to have cost recovery, and it seems like to me that the amount of, for the lack of a better word, I don't like using the word revenues, but let's just use that word for now. So for lack of a better word, the revenues generated by at least these two officers far exceed their salaries. Even if it broke even with their salaries, it seemed like that would be okay because we're supposed to be doing cost recovery and not a for-profit organization. And so if we have where both of these officers, the tickets that they write are exceeding their salary, understand why would we cut these two positions, causing a gap somewhere, whether it's the weekend or the weekday, when we not only would exceed the salary that we're paying them, but there would be a small surplus sort of to go into the general fund. That part I'm not understanding the necessity for these two positions. If one is 17, a surplus of 17,000, and the other one a surplus of about 5,000 or 6,000 over their salary, I should say, then I don't get the logic. It seems like we can still balance our books without eliminating these two positions.
May I make a comment? This is Marla Pendleton, the finance director.
Yes.
Looking at the two positions, part-time positions that we're referring to, the code enforcement officer and the municipal service officer, the budget for next year has higher salaries that are budgeted. The total amount for the two is $53,960. The information that was given on the parking citations was not given to me in advance to comment on it. Is that what those individuals brought in or not? But if you've got coverage throughout the week, my guess is your amount that's coming in is still comparable. I do see an increase in the revenue, so I don't see it as that much of a difference. And also, on top of the salaries, that's not the only cost we bear when we talk about profit loss, breaking even, and in this instance, it is not a profit or loss because citations are a fine, a penalty for something that's done. It's not a cost to providing services because we are not providing a service. We're penalizing people to defer them from doing a certain action. But in this instance, you would not have directly your salaries. You also have your administrative overhead, the supervisors that have to oversee them. You have the cost of the vehicle, the gas. There's much more than just a strict hourly salary that's included in the cost of employing somebody. So that I don't think could be comparative. And in addition, the analysis that we did do, I don't see the revenue changing substantially. We're looking for 1.25 million decrease. A shortfall, and this played into it. I don't see that it's going to change our revenue substantially. That's my opinion, but again, have not vetted the information. I do know overall that the fines were taken into consideration. That's part of the revenue that's in, and these are part of the costs that we identified to cut.
And Mr. Mayor, this is Kevin Chun. If the council's concern is coverage for staff on weekends or other days, that is something that we can certainly make up. That is certainly something that we can take care of. So, our first consideration in developing this, of course, was looking at ways to find cost savings through our departments, and then reach. Being able to fill that budget deficit of $1.25 million. So, that's what we were able to do with these recommendations. If the concern is something that's operational, that's something that we can certainly take care of.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Robert, this is Mayor Pro Tem Flores. I had a question. Because of our, during COVID-19, we ceased parking citations for, pretty much since, what was it? Did we start in March, I want to say, or April? Has that affected the amount of citation? Those were a few months that we went without any of those citations. And how has that impacted our budget?
Michael, do you want to address that as far as operational and writing tickets?
Yeah, I can address that. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you on this. I don't have the numbers directly in front of me, but we have been shut down for about 9 weeks plus as a result of COVID-19. We are not looking to operate again fully until the beginning of July, which probably puts about 3.5 months of of no coverage on street sweeper. Sweeper will average between $6,000 to $7,000 a week in citations. So multiply that out, and you're talking about $60,000, $70,000. Of course, not every penny goes to the city. There's payments to the courts, also payments to the citation processing company, citation processing center that does all the accounting for us and processing of citations. The city yields about 65% per ticket for street sweeping, so that lessens the $60,000 to $70,000 we can expect, but right around that number, you're looking at maybe $35,000, $40,000 we probably wouldn't see for the time that the sweeper will have been down for. That's just a guesstimate, of course. You know, it varies depending on how many cars are on the road, but that's an average.
Okay. Did that answer your question, madam?
Yeah. Well, I think that was more for this year's budget, but, you know, just curious how that impacted us as well. And, you know, I just wanted to kind of see what we're looking at here.
And Mr. Mayor, this is Kevin Chun again. I'm not sure if I articulated my last comments well, but you know, from a personnel standpoint, again, if the city council is concerned that we have adequate staffing over the weekends, we can certainly make do with the personnel that we will have with our full-time personnel to provide that coverage. This is something that we discussed specifically, and we came to the conclusion that we could make shifts with our full-time staff in order to provide the necessary coverage during the weekend, over the weekends as well.
Okay.
Robert, this is Councilman Kearney.
Yes, sir.
I understand that, Kevin, but Michael did say there'll be a lull time during the week where we won't have any coverage. And are you talking about making sure we have coverage at hourly rate or overtime rate? And I have a question for Marla when I get a chance. If we keep these two people on the payroll, how much unemployment insurance benefits will we benefit from that we wouldn't be paying out?
Okay, for unemployment insurance, I honestly don't have that number. Maybe Raylette would have a good estimate for that, what's being paid out right now, but that I don't know. It depends on who files and going rate right now. As far as, let's see, I'm sorry, what was your other question?
About the the other question is for Kevin or Michael Reyes about the lull time during the week. And I want to know if we're going to have lull time or on the weekend. Kevin says we're going to have enough coverage. Are we going to use regular hours, or are we going to absorb overtime hours?
Kevin, I'm comfortable fielding that if you're okay with that. I'd answer your question, Councilman Kearney. We are 7 days a week operational for Municipal Services Department. We cover animal control, parking control, and code enforcement all 7 days. We would be able to have people on 7 days a week without going into overtime. We would have to push the full-timers to weekend shifts. They would probably be on a Wednesday through Saturday shift we'd probably do like a pontoon. It would be Group A would be Wednesdays through Saturdays. Group B would be Sundays through Wednesdays. Everybody's shifts would change. There would be coverage in terms of service levels that would probably drop. Additionally, having full-timers who have dedicated tasks of code enforcement and animal control, their primary functions are not parking. Having less parking on is certainly going to be a lull in response times, I would imagine. The weekend people we have now as part-timers, they primarily spend their days in the field. Their main function is parking citations and handling animal calls. They initiate code cases. They don't follow through on code cases. The code cases they begin are handed over to the full-timers, Greg and, our two full-time code officers. However, having said that, their primary function is citations. So
Correct.
we will certainly not see the same amount of numbers. And in terms of response times, you would be having full-timers interrupting their typical duties to respond to loose dog calls and to parking complaints. So it would be a lull. It'd be covered. It'd be a reduction in terms of service levels.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
So let me ask you this. So what would happen if we to the budget in terms of being balanced if we included these two positions? Would that throw our budget off? Would it no longer be balanced?
No, we won't be balanced. We will have a additional deficit, something we would have to plug for those two positions. $53,960 is the exact amount.
And how much was that? You mentioned there was an item that we had a savings, and you were going to want us to give
The
directions.
unemployment insurance was around 43.
43.
Which is not adequate. The budget right now would not be adequate to support all of the actions that are proposed, so that's why we were bumping it up.
So let me make sure I understand. So there was a surplus somewhere that we were going to give directions on. Is that the 43?
Yes.
So if that surplus was 43, and we're looking for, let's say, if we had a desire to fund these two positions, and we're looking for $53,000 more dollars to fund these positions, and we have 43, that means we would need to find $10,000, right?
It doesn't work out. My accounting is a little different because if we lay off people, we know there's going to be unemployment claims, and we do not have enough in the existing budget. So we need to bump it up. We don't know how much at this point we need to bump it up. So we wanted to at least include that little surplus, but it could be far over that.
Oh, I see. So you want to include the 43 surplus into the unemployment.
Correct. Unemployment to pay for what's going to happen by laying people off.
Okay, so you already have a...
Yeah, it's not a surplus. We want to put it into unemployment.
Okay, I see. Okay. I thought it was loose cash. Okay. Okay. All right, does anyone else have any thing on item 1? We can certainly come back and see what is the desire of the council for. Other than that, we would need $53,000.
Item 1 took long enough.
Okay, you said it took long enough. Okay. Let's see. Marley, what do you think is the best way to proceed? You think it's to go one item by item and see the directions on it, or?
We can, if that's your desire. You want me to go through and give you a little brief on what all of them and see if people want to talk on it and then vote on it in totality?
Well, let's do that for the brief, because I think we did the brief kind of a little earlier.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilman Reed.
Yes, sir.
I'd say the question, maybe we should poll and see if there's a particular line item that we have concern on that we want to talk about in detail. I think we have gone over the bulk of these fairly well. I do have a question on item 13 that I could put into that particular thing, but the rest of these, I think we've covered.
Okay, why don't we proceed? Thank you, Councilman, the way we were doing it, where I'll just name the item, pause for a second. If no one has anything they want to talk about on that item, we'll proceed to the next one without going over the item, because we've already have done so. When we get to the item which you want to speak on, then that's when you jump in. So we get item 1. What about item 2? Reduction in recreation program. Okay.
Mayor, this is Councilman Kearney.
Yes, sir.
I think we can reduce the uniform budget even more. But those are only pennies, but I don't think they need $1,500 for uniforms over and what we have staffed in recreation over there.
Okay, how much do you think we need instead of $1,500?
I would say 1,000 at the most.
Okay. Anybody have a problem with that? Is that adequate?
Mike Estes?
Who would be able to answer this?
Mike Estes.
Mike?
Yes, Mr.
$1,000.
Mayor and City Council members, Mike Estes, Director of Community Services. I believe $1,000 is sufficient for the short part-time staff that we'll be having throughout the year and volunteers. We will need to rely on volunteer support a great deal.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anyone else have any? So we'll make it at 1,000 instead of 1,500. Anyone else have anything on item 2?
No, I'm okay with that.
Okay, let's move to item 3, reduce full-time staff in community service department. Anyone want to speak on this item? Okay, I don't see anyone wants to speak on this item. Okay, number 4, eliminating our travel training budget. Okay, no one wants to speak on that one. Number 6, discontinue the unarmed security. Okay, hearing none.
No, I have a question on that.
You skipped 5, Robert.
I skipped 5. Okay, let's go back to 5. I sure did. Let's go back to 5. Eliminating the crossing guard services. The proposal is to eliminate the crossing guard service.
This is Mayor Pro Tem Flores. I have a quick question.
Yes.
Is the school still out? Are they doing remote learning? I'm just curious.
Yes, they are.
Yes.
Okay.
For another
That's my
week.
question.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So that's all we have on item 5. Okay. Item 6, unarmed security services discontinuing.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I don't know, whoever, Parla, Kevin, whoever can handle it. I know we have to do it. I hate to see it go because we just started it. If it was to be brought back at some time, I'm hopeful that it's not a difficult task. Perhaps even if it goes out to bid again, you might even find even a more affordable agency. I don't know. Am I right in thinking that it wouldn't be that difficult if finances return to some better state in the future, that we could have it? Because you're talking at a time where you have all of this civil unrest and so forth, and you're going to be eliminating one more level of security for the city hall and complex at the Civic Center. Anybody answer that?
I can take that, Mr. Mayor. Mike Estes, Director of Community Services. It has been a fairly valuable service, and the security officer has been taking care of several issues, homeless around the neighborhood. Graffiti has been way down. I can't remember one instance of graffiti in the Civic Center since January, since we started this service. I do believe that it's expendable at this point, and I think when we added this service to the budget back at the end of last second half of the fiscal year, that it was seen as somewhat of a luxury, and I can see the reason for this not returning for the time being, due to the budget situation. If things improve, I would recommend that could be a service that does come back, maybe at a lesser level than $26,000 a year.
Yes,
but, it's a sign of the times. Those are my comments.
Yeah, I understand that, Mike. I think you kind of answered it. So your feeling is that at some point, if finances come back better in the near future, it's something that we could return to.
Yes, I do believe so. And then also taking this one step further, Councilman Osborne, as I did look at our LA County grant funding to see if this service would be covered. And unfortunately, it's not. And I did look at 2 other options to get at least a portion of this covered or the whole part of it covered, because we do have quite a strong amount of LA County Measure A funding coming in every year. But unfortunately, this is one of those services that does not qualify.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Mike.
And Councilmember Osborne, this is Kevin Chun. When the council did approve that service some months ago, part of the discussion was, we would bring on this security guard company and sort of test how they performed. And quite frankly, it's been spotty from in my opinion. At times, the level of service wasn't what we expected. At other times, it was, I would say, adequate. So yes, I agree with Mike that this is a good place to cut. It is expendable. At a future time, should we have restoration of revenues. We can look at it again, and at that point, we can even look at a new company, perhaps
Yeah.
that could provide some better service for us.
Yeah, that's good, and I agree with your analysis on it. I know I had to call over there to Diane to say that there were some problems going on outside City Hall and have the guy come out. So I thought he needs to patrol a little bit more on foot around the facilities. But yeah, sounds good. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Uh-oh. Just having an avalanche of papers. Okay. Let's move to item 7. Reduce the requested funds for Public Works Department grounds maintenance. Any issues on that one? Okay, seeing none, let's go to item 8. Reduce the existing citywide tree trimming, etc. Anyone want to speak on that item? Okay, moving to 9. Reduce the budget funding for the Senior Travel Club. I think we discussed that one.
Mayor, this is Councilman Kearney.
Yes, sir.
I believe I asked Marla, or I can't remember if Marla or Willette to check on that to see if Prop A money covers that. The special 194 we got.
Yes, we looked into that for the CDBG grant.
Yes.
And that unfortunately will not be covered by that. So this is an unallowable cost. So that has to be, if we're going to continue to support that function, it needs to be covered by the general fund.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's move to item number 10, to defer $43,400 one-time funding budget request. This is concerning ADA. Anyone have any issues with that one? Okay, let's move to item 11, the transfer eligibility, eligible costs from the community service, recreation, and senior activities budget. Anyone have anything on that? Okay, we'll move to item 12. Item 12, here doesn't really affect this budget, but we want to get this possibly going. Item 12, anyone have any concerns with item 12?
I think.
Well, I do have a little concern with item 12. Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
I just have a concern. I know the state, I know this is something that we've always felt that the school board should, at least contribute to, but my concern is that, I already know right now the enrollment has been declining. It seems to be on a trend. They're, I know, in a position where it's, they're not, I don't know that they'll be able to take over some of this. The only concern that I have is if should they decide, well, we're not going to maintain, the parks end up not having any maintenance. I know we have a year to decide, so I'm not too concerned. It's something we can always revisit, but those are just a few things that I'm concerned with.
Yeah, that was one of my concerns. We don't want to get into having to send them a notice of correction if they don't maintain the yards. But with that being said, this is something that we can fully vet at another council meeting, because it goes in effect a year after we give them the notification. So it doesn't necessarily correspond with the budget that we have to adopt. My concern is if we want to do all three at one time or just one and then see how that works or what have you, but it seems like we have a little time to make this decision.
Mayor, Councilman Kearney?
Yes, sir.
I think we should give them notice now and give them the 1 year. And we can come back anytime and say, okay, we'll take the parks. But, I understand Mayor Pro Tem Suarez's concerns, but we have a budget deficit too. And we cannot keep maintaining the parks and paying electricity and all that and staffing the parks. We're laying off a bunch of people. And I just saw today that, I forget what group, petitioned on the November ballot about funding for schools and communities. I think we should notice the school district as maybe the 15th, that from 1 year from June 15th, we're giving the parks back to them and see if they would negotiate with us and see if they'll take over paying for half the park or staffing. We cannot keep funding the parks. And we're like the middlemen right now. We don't have anything to do with football, rugby, baseball, soccer. we're just the middlemen at the park, but we're paying all the park up maintenance, we're paying for the utilities. Something has to give, and I recommend that we put the school board on notice as of June 15th that we're giving back the parks 1 year from June 15th, and see what their response is.
So let me ask you, maybe I don't know whoever want to answer this. If we give the notice, does that actually make that ironclad, or can we not go through with it if we at a later time within that year decide that we do in fact want to keep the parks, all three or one or two? Because my only concern is whether or not to give up all three of the parks. I do agree with you, council member, on all the points you raised. My concern is whether or not it's advantageous to give up all three instead of like one or two. And have we fully analyzed what happens if we keep one versus giving all three of them?
Robert,
yes.
Pat, I disagree because I view it as this is a benefit to the entire community. I think this should be an action of last resort. We don't know what the economy may be another year or two from now, but I think that's almost draconian to just eliminate a valuable resource for all the kids and the rest of the residents in the city. I don't think that's the right tactic unless the economy will just take a worse hit and go down the tubes, and then you have no choice. You have to cut all sorts of things. But I think that's going too far at this point.
This is Councilman Reed.
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, the viable point is on both sides. But, in my opinion, we do have to start the conversation somewhere. The notice of termination will give us some middle ground to speak of and come up with a cohesive plan between the two entities going forward. But, with that 1 year out, if we don't do that for 6 months and it crashes harder than we expect, then we're a further year out of funding.
But as long as we're able to rescind.
Well, I think maybe Kevin or Raylette read the contract. It says 1 year. Can we negotiate or say, okay, things are better, we'll keep the parks?
Pat, can I answer from a legal perspective? This is Tiffany.
Okay.
I looked at that language and yeah, it's a contract. You can always negotiate it.
Okay.
There's definitely an option if they're willing to entertain that.
And Mr. Mayor, this is Kevin Chun again. Yeah, I think this would put us in a good position to negotiate with the Lawndale Elementary School District, and it's something that I can certainly work with the superintendent and try to broker a meeting between representatives of the City Council and the Board of Education to work towards some middle point, perhaps, if that's possible. And if that is possible, then we can rescind the notice, some point down the road.
I'm okay with that modification, but I just wouldn't eliminate the parks. I think that's detrimental to the community.
I agree with you, Jim, at one point, but we still have three parks we own. That could be
but they're in land size. They're so much smaller than Rogers, Anderson, Adams, and Green. I don't know the exact number, but it's probably 4 times as big as the property that we own. If you total it all up,
right?
I think it should be the last. I'm fine with negotiating for a better deal. I think that's fine.
Yeah.
To just go clear cut and wipe it out, you may never get it back again.
Well, you got to use all three parts to get a negotiating tool for both.
No, I'm fine with negotiating.
Yeah. But
I just wouldn't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Like I said, you may not get it back, and then you've damaged the future of a recreation resource for a lot of people and a lot of kids.
Well, I understand that, but I still think we should notice them that we're from whatever date it is, June 15th, today, that we'll put them on notice that we're returning the parks back to them, and we use that for negotiating to them.
Well, again, I don't know if I'd go that far. As far as having discussions, negotiations, reductions. I think that's a good tactic to take. But at this point, we still don't know exactly where the economy is headed. I mean, you've watched even things like the Dow has returned back over 26,000 from dipping to 18. So not all doom and gloom, even though it's bad at the time. But you just don't know a year out or even 2 years out where we'll be.
But well, I'm going to recommend that we do send a notice. I mean, that's my recommendation. I'm only one person on the council, and then we could use that as a negotiating tool. And if we decide the economy comes back up, we can negotiate and say, hey, we'll keep the parks, but maybe you guys can pay something. It's just like the crossing guards, Jim. You know, and Robert knows.
Yeah.
We've been battling that for years.
Yeah, well, I agree with you there.
Yeah. So I'm going to recommend that we do send a notice to the school district, want to terminate the parks, and see what they come back with.
I can't support it as a definitive. If it's a possibility, okay.
Yeah.
If it's worded as a definitive, it's going to happen no matter what. No, I don't support that.
Well, could we say that we would like to renegotiate, but have in our mind, if we don't reach an agreement by a certain time, then we would give them at that time the 1 year notice. Let's say if it's a month, 2, whatever it happens to be.
I'll go with that.
Yeah.
And that way we are negotiating with them, and if we haven't reached it, then we give them that notice.
Well, I'd like to see how it's worded first. Whatever draft staff can come up with.
And that would, and the official action will come at a later council meeting, not necessarily tonight. Tonight would set the tone for that, that direction. Because I would like to know that yes, we, in addition to negotiating, and if we fail to negotiate, are we willing to give up all 3 of the parks, 1 of the parks, or 2 of the parks, and at least be able to analyze what would happen in all 3 scenarios? And so if we don't reach an agreement by a time certain, we're not blindly saying, okay, all 3, and then having buyer's remorse later saying, oh, yeah, it was prudent to give up 1 of them, but why did we give up all 3? Or maybe it was prudent to give up 2, why did we give all 3?
Well, that's a better tack.
Yeah. Well, Councilman Reed and I said it on the subcommittee. Dan, do you want to chime in about the discussions we've had with the school district about help funding the parks? And they told us.
Yeah, we have been told to pound sand in regards to those conversations. Yeah. So I understand where you're coming from of wanting to say, let's talk to it, let's put it off a month or 2. But we've been having these conversations now for a couple of years, and neither one have gone anywhere. So that's the purpose of the recommendation.
No, I can appreciate that, but I'll tell you what, it might be a different. So when you guys were talking to them, and I appreciate that, we were talking from the standpoint that we're bearing 100% of the cost, and we would love for you guys to share in the cost. Of course, from their standpoint, that's it's not necessarily advantageous for them to share in the cost when they can get us to bear 100% of the cost. But in this case, if we're talking about that, if we fail to reach an agreement, we're going to get the parks back, then they're going to be bearing 100% of the cost of those parks and maintaining them, which Correct. They may want to do. So we have a different bargaining position now, because now we're saying that we're entertaining giving up the parks, not right. rather than if you don't give us half, we're just going to be mad but continue to pay 100%.
Yep.
Yeah. Kevin can.
Yes. So, Mr. Mayor, if the council is okay with this action tonight, I can let the superintendent know that the council would like to serve notice of its intent to give back the parks. However, the council's intent is to sit down with the school district and to try to come to some type of a mutual agreement. And I'm sorry.
One caveat: we're not serving them notice that we intend on, because that would be the 1 year notice date if right. that was the case. We want to enter into negotiations, and if we don't have a settlement by a certain time. We don't necessarily have to give them the time. Then we will give them that notice.
Okay. Well, the thought behind providing the notice at this point is so that we could be ready for the next fiscal year budget. So that was the reason why we.
Yeah.
That's the reason why we thought about serving notice immediately. So, like I said, if we were to serve notice now, I could just let the superintendent know that while that's been done, the intent is to enter into talks with the school district, and we can do that.
If that was the intent and you're entering in good faith, then you wouldn't give notice. You would have negotiations in good faith, and not coming to an agreement. Then you would give notice. To me, that doesn't.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, this is Councilman Reed.
Yes, sir.
The issue here is if we drag this on for 2 months, we cannot affect the following year budget if we have to.
Okay. And, well, okay, I get that. See, my whole issue with the parks is not necessarily the budget, our budget savings. It's whether or not we really have control of the parks, because like the council member Kearney was saying, that we're a lot of times acting as the middle person where we're just administrating it, on the parks. That's really my concerns with the park. We have so many restrictions or whatever where we're, with baseball and all those things he mentioned, we don't have anything to do with those activities.
Correct.
But yet we bear the cost of maintaining the fields and the yards, and when there's complaints, the complaints don't go to the school, they come to the city.
That's all true.
That's my concern, not necessarily because if we cut them, we can save, we can save the cost. There's probably a lot of stuff we can cut that we can save the cost, but I don't think that's what we're really looking for. We want to make sure that if they're truly our parks, then yes, and we have 100% control of it, we have 100% control of it. But since we don't, the school district should be helping to maintain them.
Correct.
But I do understand your point. So it sounds like which way we think we want to go? We want to go to give them a preliminary notice, but this is not the official notice, so it doesn't mark that time. But they do know that we have a desire to reach an agreement, and if we fail to reach an agreement in short order, we'll give them the official quote unquote notice that we intend on giving up one or more of the parks. I don't know if it's an all or nothing position or what.
That's a reasonable approach.
Yeah.
And that the way you say that leads me to a question for Tiffany. Tiffany, are we able to put any caveat in here that we want to enter negotiations, but if we fail, then it is backdated to the date of notification?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a way that we could word that, that we're giving notice, but would like to. Well, yeah, we could do it the way you said it. Kevin and I can put a letter together like that.
Yep, I think that would cover both concerns.
Yeah.
Is everyone comfortable with that?
I'm very comfortable.
How about you, Jim?
Yes, I can.
Bernadette?
Yes.
Okay. Sound like we have a consensus on item 12. Okay, so let that be the order. All right, let's move to item 13, considering reducing the Lawndale beach services. Any issues with item 13?
This is Councilmember Reed.
Yes,
so I totally, if we've talked about this in committee, and I totally support this whole plan from this, but then the question that I have is back to staff. From these prop funds, where could we utilize this? Would this be in an uptick or an improvement over some bus stops or other things that would be qualified expenses for that particular funds?
Mayor and City Council, this is Mike Estes, Director of Community Services. I think I can address this. This is services funded by Prop A funds for strictly for transit, and Councilman Reed, you're right there, that it can be used for bus stop improvements, anything related to transportation, and that's one thing that has been talked about at the staff level for about a year or so, to do something with the bus stops.
Even longer than that.
Yeah, maybe a year and a half or so, just before Steve left, but maybe the council has talked about it for longer. But yeah, it's properly eligible, and we would find ways to utilize that money. There's many different ways it can be used, and bus stops are one of the ways it can be used. And they can also be used for vehicle improvements, anything transportation related.
Okay, thank you very much.
Very good.
Mayor,
Okay. Yes, sir.
go ahead, Bernadette. Ladies first.
Okay, Bernadette.
No, it was just a question with regards to the Prop A funds. So those don't expire, do they? Do they just accumulate each year?
They do not accumulate each year. They go back into the hopper, so to speak, but every year we get refreshed with Prop A funds, essentially whatever we ask for, as far as I understand it, and Marla may want to comment deeper on this, but as far as I understand, we typically get whatever we ask for if it's within reason. I don't remember one year during my 13 years here where we didn't get what we asked for in terms of Prop A funding.
Very, very good.
Mayor, Councilman Kearney.
Okay, thank
If we decide we're gonna eliminate one, I think the express route should be the one eliminated, because we have metro buses on all our thoroughfares. They can take metro bus. I think the residential is more pertinent for our cause than the allowing major thoroughfares. So I'd like to eliminate the express route instead of the residential route.
Mayor, City Council, this is Mike Estes again, Director of Community Services. That makes a lot of sense. My first decade or so here, the express ridership easily trumped the residential, but I've seen a trend over the past year and a half to 2 years, not including the past 3 months where we've been under the COVID pandemic situation, but within the past year and a half to 2 years, the residential ridership has surpassed the express. So if we're talking about customer service, for customer service purposes, I would agree with Councilman Kearney.
I would agree as well.
Ditto.
This is Mayor Pro Tem Suarez. I have another question. If the ridership were to increase and say things start to go back to, people using those routes and buses more, we can always amend the budget, right? And incorporate the other routes again if needed.
Yeah, yes, we certainly can. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that we're getting an additional, you guys see these every year, and you're going to see a couple more coming up in the next month or so, is our NTD local return funds, which we get about $35,000 a year. And that is another small pot of Prop A funds that is regularly coming to us based on successful audits of the Lawndale beat system. So the Prop A in the general fund budget is not really the only pot of Prop A funds that the city does return or does receive. So that is, just another source of funds that we get consistently year after year, as long as we do participate in the audits.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Is there anything else on item 13 concerning the Lawndale beat services? Okay, let's move to our last item. 14 is increased unemployment insurance budget. Do we have anyone want to speak on that one? Okay.
This is Councilman Reed. I just have one comment.
Yes,
as Marla's already indicated, this could readily exceed what we're proposing to add to it. So this is something that we need to keep in the back of our head. I have actually already seen that from our corporate locations in my private work. So, it's one of those things that we do need to keep very heavy in the back of our mind.
Okay, we'll do. We'll keep that in the back of our minds. See how that pans out. Okay, so we have exhausted all the recommendations. I'm going to ask Finance Director to summarize so that we make sure that we're all on the same page concerning these recommendations, after which we will have a motion to adopt the recommendation from the council. Take it away, Ms. Finance Director / Treasurer.
I'm sorry, you want me to
Yeah, I want someone to recap what our the recommendations are, so that make sure that we're all on the same page on these recommendations.
I'm not completely sure if there's a consensus yet on the code enforcement officer and the municipal operations.
And that's item 1, right? Item 1.
Correct.
Okay.
So going over what we have, and I'd like to see something specific so it's clear what your direction are. But number 1 would be to lay off our temporary staff, except for those that are specifically funded by other funding sources such as CDBG or Prop A, and then also include the funding sources for the rec leaders, senior rec leaders, and the cable TV assistants as put in the chart that was provided. Would like to get a specific motion on the code enforcement and municipal operations position that were discussed. The recommendation that was provided was to eliminate those, but there was discussion on those. Number 2 is on our uniforms for the rec program. The consensus is to decrease the budget by $2,000, only leaving $1,000 left in the requested budget. Number 3, reduce full-time staff in the community service department, eliminating the community service supervisor, community service coordinator, and the recreation coordinator. Number 4 is to eliminate all travel and training budgets for $32,425. Number 4, eliminate school crossing guard budget. $132,405 is what was originally put into this year's budget. Number 6, discontinue the unarmed security service. 7, reduce the public works ground maintenance budgets by $37,500. Number 8, reduce tree trimming services by $80,000. Number 5, reduce the senior travel club to $10,000. Defer the one-time expenditure for the ADA standards design contract. Number 11, basically transfer eligible costs for the senior meals program, fitness classes, and senior activities for the sum of $100,679 to the new CDBG EV grant. Number 12 is to write a letter basically summarizing that we're going to give notice or enter into negotiations if we are unable to fill coming to an agreement. Then our intent is to give back one or more schools to the Lawndale Elementary School District.
Question?
Parks,
Yes.
not schools.
Parks.
I'm sorry, Lawndale Elementary. Yeah, isn't it?
Parks.
No, you meant
said give
parks.
back school. You mean
To give it back to parks.
The parks.
Yeah,
You said give back schools.
Yeah.
The parks, and the agreement is to the elementary.
Right. We understand.
Parks that they have,
I
but
thought-
we're operating for them.
Okay.
Number 13 is to reduce the Lawndale beat services, specifically eliminating the express route, and then basically redetermine how those costs can be used. And there were some potential things that were mentioned, but basically reutilize that money that is available. Number 14, for the excess funding in the proposed budget of $43,340, increase unemployment insurance budget. And then the overall recommendation is to approve the budget as amended.
Okay. So the only item that we need clarification on is 1 then.
And I have a question on 12. Oh.
You got to define fireworks outside.
No.
Okay, so what was the clarification on 12?
Yeah. What kind of a time frame we giving the school? If we want to get it on next year's budget, we'd have to probably do July 1st. Have some kind of talk with the school district by July 1st, and then if not, we can notice them as of July 1st, and we can still get it on next year's budget, correct?
Hi, Pat. This is Tiffany. I agree.
Hi. Okay.
Yeah, that was the note I had written down that we'll get right on it.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so we're clear on all the items except for one. Well, the staff's not totally clear on the direction of one. So the way we're going on item one is that, we have a $53,000 expenditure, and when I approached this, I thought we had $40,000 in loose change to go towards the 53, leaving $10,000 to find, but that's not the case. It looks like in order to fund the two positions in question, we need $53,000. Otherwise, if we fund them without doing something else, the budget is not balanced.
Correct.
This is Councilman Reed.
Yes, sir.
So I would say for clarity that we would like to have these two positions on the first recall if budget modifications come up in the future that would allow us to bring it back.
Okay. This is Councilman Kearney, Robert?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to see these two positions funded because I have a bad feeling about the overlapping. I know it's $53,000 ding, but we can make it up somewhere. We'll make it up with the unemployment insurance we'll be paying on these two. What they bring in, it goes to the general fund. So whatever the council decides, my vote is to bring them back and keep them.
So then the question, thank you for that. The question would be, and maybe Marvin can speak to this. Where can we pick up $53,000? Because that's basically what we're looking for.
We're going to have to look for it, honestly. We had things like furloughs, we had all sorts of things we discussed, but that was not a recommendation of the subcommittee. Basically, everything that was up for consideration, you're looking at it right now. The budgets are very tight.
This is Mayor Pro Tem Suarez. I'm along the lines with Dan that maybe we, have to bite the bullet, and then if we do have funds that come up, then we can look at, filling those positions again.
Okay.
Yeah, and just kind of another thought from that is, I do understand the concern of that particular overlap and a possible gap, but if we have to furlough folks, that's going to open gaps in other locations. And that's the only other option I could see where we could quickly try to fill that hole.
And I'm sorry, can I make one more suggestion? Because I did not bring up the obvious. I overlooked the obvious. The obvious is you go ahead and adopt a budget. You've got a $54,000 shortfall, but it comes from basically reserves, which is prior year money that's sitting there. So that is an option. But then our budget doesn't balance current year, but your reserves are going down. But we're talking it's $54,000.
You don't want to start hurting the reserves. You don't want to start hurting the reserves.
Yeah, reserves have already gone down this year than last year, but that's always an option. Take it out of this year's budget. I honestly don't see it right now.
I agree with Bernadette and Dan. Go with staff recommendation.
Okay. All right. Just make sure we don't have any loose change here that I can find. Well,
Yeah, the only loose change that I could see, Mr. Mayor, is some of the discretionary funds where, as committee, we actually discussed dropping $1,200 out of our own discretionaries, but that's nowhere near the drop that we need to attain.
Yeah, that wouldn't. Yeah, you're right. That definitely wouldn't pick up 53.
And this is Councilman Kearney. I think, Dan, remember we discussed that if they want to go to Indian Wells, they'll use that other $1,200 to pay for their own trip, other refund.
Yeah, but like he was saying, that with the 53 and the related costs.
Yeah, it's only $6,000.
Yeah, that would do. Well, unfortunately, I don't see where we have the funds to do these two positions, Mr. Councilman Kearney.
Okay.
Okay, so unfortunately, we would on item 1 we would go with the staff recommendation.
Time for a motion.
I think we are, unless the city manager or the director of finance have any last, not last minute, but additional comments. I think we probably are ready for a motion.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, no further comments. The recommendations are clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that being the case, I'll entertain a motion at this time.
This is Jim. I'll make the motion with the adjustments that Marla stated when she summarized.
Yes. Okay, so Mr. Osborne, Councilman Osborne has made the motion that we approve the budget as amended.
It's Councilman Reed. I'll second it.
Councilman, I don't know why I'm writing Councilman on here. Reed has seconded the motion. Is there any discussion or debate on the motion?
This is Councilman Kearney, Mayor.
Yes.
I will agree from 2 to 14. I will vote no on number 1.
Okay. Okay. Well, you let the record reflect that,
yes,
that you are opposed to number 1 because it's one motion. Though.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir. And I'm opposed to it too, but I just don't see where we have the 53. Well, with that being the case, is there any more discussion on the motion or any debate? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the Assistant City Clerk to give us the vote, please.
For item number 4, adopting the amended fiscal year 2021 budget, Mayor Pro Tem Suarez?
Yes.
Councilmember Osborne?
Yes.
Councilmember Reed?
Yes.
Councilmember Kearney?
No on 1. I oppose number 1 and 2 through 14. I agree. Yes, with yes.
Okay, the record will reflect opposition to item 1 for the motion. For the motion to adopt the budget.
I will go. I'll say yes.
Mayor Paul Miles?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that is the last item on our agenda in this special meeting. I want to thank all the staff for putting together the budget. I know this was a tough document this year. A lot of hard decisions we as a council and as the management of the city had to make tonight. And I want to thank the subcommittee for the hours that they worked on this budget. You know, it's much easier when you have a surplus and things are rolling. You know, to make these kind of decisions or what have you. And but when you have to make the tough decisions, that's good for the organization as a whole. That's what the management is for, and that's what we're here for. And I just want to thank everyone for all their hard work, and the city manager, the finance director, and the department, all the department heads who contribute, I should say, this budget proposal. And unless someone have anything else they want to say, we pretty much have exhausted our agenda.
This is Jim, and I just want to echo what you said, Robert. It's not easy to put a budget together even under good times, but these are extraordinary times, so it's even more of a challenge and a greater task. So, like you said, it's appreciated. It's very difficult to make these kinds of choices and cuts. We don't enjoy it, but that's what we're tasked with doing. So we did our duty, I believe. But again, a thanks to all staff involved and the subcommittee.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you, sir. Councilmember Osborne. With that, we will adjourn this meeting. Let's see when the next meeting. I did have that.
June 15th.
June 15th?
Correct.
Oh, okay, right here. Okay, the next regular scheduled meeting of the City Council will be held Monday, June 15th.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry. This is Kevin Chun. Mayor Pro Tem Suarez had an item that she wanted to bring up.
Oh, we're going to take up that item maybe at another date.
Okay.
But thank you very much.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
All right. All right. With that, we are adjourned.
Good night, everybody.